thing that I missed, which I'd love to have Dan chime in on now, which is Lesbian Day of Visibility. Dan, could you join us and talk about that? Oh.
Great, thanks, Sam. As part of our Welcoming Congregation renewal work this year, we've been tasked with highlighting and acknowledging some LGBTQ days of celebration or recognition. Today we'll lift up the Lesbian Day of Visibility. It was first celebrated on April 26, 2008, though no one really seems to know the circumstances of its creation. It's largely an invisible day for most people, even for lesbians, but it's gaining some momentum. Personally, I think this is an important day because lesbian invisibility has a long history. For example, according to an article on Ellen DeGeneres' website, they say McKinsey's Women in the Workplace report of 2019 illuminates some of the ways in which lesbians experience workplace differently and more negatively to women in general. In their survey of over 68,500 U.S. employees, 23% of lesbians reported feeling that they could not talk about themselves or their life outside of work, compared to 10% of women overall. 24% of lesbians reported hearing demeaning remarks about them or people like them. Most concerning is the fact that 53% of lesbians reported experiencing sexual harassment in the workplace, compared to 41% of women overall. And this is just one aspect of how lesbians continue to struggle with being seen as valuable members of society. And the site goes on by saying, as with many other awareness-raising days, Lesbian Visibility Day has multiple purposes: to celebrate lesbian role models, to support lesbians in organizations and workplaces to feel safe, included, and welcome, to raise awareness, educate, and inform allies regarding varied experiences of lesbians, to foster understanding and cultivate a more welcome environment, and to recognize diversity among lesbians. As with all groups, they are not homogeneous. So let us continue our good work of supporting and welcoming people in the LGBTQ community by helping to create a culture where it feels safe to live authentically and where people can thrive. Today, let us say to all lesbians that we see you. We see your whole selves and we welcome you. And I'd like to offer up that if you identify as a lesbian and wish to do so, raise your hand so you can be recognized.
Okay.
Whether or not you raise your hand or not, thank you. We see you and you are welcome here.
All right, Dan, thank you very much. All right, we did the breakout rooms. We're into joys and sorrows, and we're going to move one more stone for all the joys and sorrows that have been left unspoken, and let us hold all that we've heard and felt in our hearts. And time for Dan's spoken meditation.
Please join me in a moment of prayerful meditation. Spirit of community in which we share and find strength and common purpose, we turn our minds and our hearts toward one another, seeking to bring into our circle of care all who need our love and support, and all those who seek to share their joys and sorrows. We come together in community to bear witness to these challenging times each seeking to connect with our beloveds, to find companionship, comfort, and hope in the midst of loss, fear, anxiety, and isolation. We are facing an unknown and uncertain future, but may we all remember that we are not alone and that we are strong together. I invite you to reflect upon these words as we enter into a time of meditation. Today, we'll be talking about perfectionism, and I'd like to spend a few minutes in meditation about what perfectionist thoughts you may be having. Are some of the following messages on constant playback in your life? Feel free to close your eyes, breathe, relax, let your spirit find its center, and see if any of these apply to you. It's up to me. If I don't do it, who will? People expect the best from me. I demand the best from others. I can't expect less of myself. If I don't get this done, I won't be able to live with myself. People will talk. What if someone comes to visit and my house is a mess? If only I could be the best, then if only my kids could be the best, then. When I don't do my best, people think less of me. Job well done will be rewarded. So ask yourself, can I be imperfect and lovable at the same time? Is it okay to be just good enough? How good do I really need to be?
Ramon loved to draw. Anything, anytime, anywhere. One day, he was drawing a vase of flowers when his brother Leon came up from behind him and pointed at the picture, laughing, and said, "What's that supposed to be?" Leon didn't know what to say. He crumpled up the piece of paper and threw it across the room. After that, he worked very hard at his drawings, but he just couldn't get them to look right. And so one day, after many months and many crumpled pieces of paper, he put his pencil down. "I'm done," he said. He saw his little sister Marisol standing there. "What are you doing?" he said. "I'm watching you draw," she said. "Well, I'm not drawing anymore. Go away." And so Marisol did run away. But first, she grabbed one of the crumpled pieces of paper from the floor. Ramon chased her up the stairs to her room, saying, "Come back here! Give that back to me!" And he followed her all the way up to her room, and he stopped when he got there, because there he saw a gallery of crumpled drawings. Marisol went to one and said, "This is my favorite." Ramon looked at it and said, "It's supposed to be a vase of flowers." And Marisol said, "Well, it looks vase-ish." Ramon looked at it. It did look vase-ish. And then he looked at all of his drawings. And he began to see them in a whole new light. So he went back to his art materials. He felt differently. He felt light and at ease, and the lines flowed from him, gentle and easy and lively, without any worry. So he began to fill a journal with ish drawings. Tree-ish. House-ish. Boat-ish. Afternoon-ish. Fish-ish. Sun-ish. And Ramon discovered that he could draw his feelings too. Peace-ish. Silly-ish. Excited-ish. And after all those ish drawings, Ramon discovered that he could write ishiously too. He wasn't sure if they were poems, but they were poem-ish. One spring morning, Ramon had a wonderful feeling, and he decided not to try to draw it or write about it. He just enjoyed it. And Ramon lived ishiously ever after. And that's the end of the story.
Thank you, Leah. That was a great story. Our reading today is by Barbara Merritt, titled "The Death of Little Anthrax, a more vicious little creature you could hardly imagine." My oldest son, upon entering college, got a pet. I was appalled by his choice, a dwarf albino hamster. I have a phobia about mice, full blown. We're talking irrational terror, and a dwarf albino hamster looks exactly like a mouse, only without a tail. So to even see this creature made me hyperventilate. Purchased in September 2001 in the midst of all kinds of predictions about biological warfare, Robert named the tiny hamster Anthrax. A more vicious little creature you could hardly imagine. With his sharp little teeth, he bit everyone who put their hand in his cage. He was so fierce that he provided endless amusement as one college student after another tried to tame him. He would have none of it. Not this hamster. Not little Anthrax. Human beings were the enemy, and he furiously guarded his cage from any intrusion. His beady little red eyes were always on the lookout for anyone foolish enough to disturb his nest. I began to feel some concern for the little creature during its occasional visit to our home. I bought him a larger cage and a mouse run that had plenty of warrens and chutes to explore. I found a soft old sock for him to sleep in. I would visit him in Robert's room just to make sure he was okay. All right, I'll admit, I even talked to Anthrax, but I didn't touch him. And I didn't like him. He always just looked like a mouse to me. But then the fateful day came when I checked on him and felt a wave of fear. There was no movement in his cage. He had passed on. Here's the surprise. I was quite sad that Anthrax had died. Robert was more philosophical about it. He thought that the existence of a dwarf albino hamster was somewhat miserable, even in the best of circumstances. But he also was sad when he saw his hamster all curled up and no longer biting anyone. A tiny creature with a highly aggressive, fearful temperament, incapable of affection, emotional responsiveness, or very much learning, was nevertheless mourned. One of the worst ideas to ever imagine from liberal religion in general and Unitarian Universalism in particular was the concept of salvation by character. Eloquently championed by William Ellery Channing, this faith in excellence was embraced by those who believed in the perfectibility of human nature and the rational conquest of life's most troubling aspects. Salvation by character meant we were going to be so good, so charitable, so wise, and so admirable that there would be little need for grace or mercy. Little Anthrax has taught me something different, something important. Being loved has nothing to do with character. Anthrax was unapproachable and never gave anything to anyone, but he was alive and he needed help. Our characters are complex, contradictory, and layered with strength and weakness, but love doesn't concern itself with the perfection of our personality or our resume. Love sees past the small flaws and the large ones. So how good do we have to be? Nobody likes to make mistakes, and we all make them every day. Some mistakes are bigger than others, but making them is part of what it means to be human. They make us feel bad. They can be embarrassing, even humiliating, and they can hurt other people's feelings. We learn that mistakes are bad when we're little. Maybe we got in trouble for spilling juice or breaking a dish. Maybe our parents got angry at us if we got a bad grade or forgot to call to say that we would be late. When we're kids, a common result of making a mistake is being punished. As we get older, we continue to make more and often bigger mistakes. And we learn from our culture that we need to strive toward perfection, and that if we mess up, we're somehow not as good as other people. Perfection is a noble ideal and a worthy goal, but in our logical, rational brains, I think we all know that perfection is not possible. From our earliest memories and experiences, we've been bombarded with these messages that our success as a person, our happiness, the respect and the approval we receive from others, and our validation that we're good people all hinge on how closely we approach achieving our cultural understanding of perfection. It's easy for us to say, it's okay to be who you are and what you are. You don't need to be perfect. We all make mistakes. We all fall short of the ideal. But when it comes down to what we actually feel inside, I think many of us can't let go of those early childhood messages that what we do is not good enough and that mistakes are very bad. A dictionary definition of mistake is an error or fault resulting from defective judgment, deficient knowledge, or carelessness. Can you hear that negative language? Error, fault, defective, deficient, careless. By definition, making a mistake implies that there is something wrong with us. There's a lot of judgment surrounding mistakes. Other people judge us, and we judge ourselves. We simply do not give ourselves and others the freedom to mess up. How might it feel if we knew it was okay? How might it feel if we failed at something and not wallow in self-judgment? I think it would feel pretty darn good. It would feel liberating and freeing. It would allow us to be more resilient, more creative, more compassionate, and best of all, more likely to try again after making a mistake. What would it be like instead if we saw mistakes as being bad and something that needs to be punished or something that caused permanent damage? What if we celebrated mistakes as an opportunity to learn and grow? What if we saw them as opportunities to make something new or beautiful? And what if we taught our children that message? I think kids are not normally and naturally enthusiastic, but they learn quickly to rein in their enthusiasm for doing things, often because they're afraid to mess up. By the time we get to be adults, we become conditioned to believe that it's not okay to make a mistake. We lose a lot of that childlike enthusiasm, and we limit ourselves by not trying new things. Robert Fulghum, who wrote All I Really Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten, has been invited to visit many kindergarten and college classrooms. And what follows is how he describes the contrast between kindergartners and the college students. He says, ask a kindergarten class, how many of you can draw? All hands shoot up. Yes, of course we can draw. All of us. What can you draw? Anything. How about a dog eating a fire truck in a jungle? Sure, how big you want it? How many of you can sing? All hands go up. Of course we can sing. What can you sing? Anything. What if you don't know the words? No problem. We'll make them up. Let's sing. Now? Why not? How many of you dance? Unanimous again. What kind of music do you dance to? Any kind. Let's dance. Now? Sure, why not? Do you like to act in plays? Yes. Do you play musical instruments? Yes. Do you write poetry? Yes. Fulghum says their answer is yes, over and over again, yes. The children are confident in spirit, infinite in resources, and eager to learn. Everything is still possible. Try these same questions on a college audience. Small percentage of the students will raise their hands when asked if they draw, or dance, or sing, or paint, or act, or play an instrument. Not infrequently, those who do raise their hands will want to qualify their response with limitations. I only play the piano. I only draw horses. I only dance to rock and roll. I only sing in the shower. So what can we do? How can we escape the guilt and shame of not reaching our versions of perfection, either in ourselves or others, and just be good enough? How can we embrace and celebrate our mistakes and take risks that we might not otherwise take? One way would be to see every mistake as an opportunity to create something good or beautiful. we can try to change our attitudes about making a mistake. An elementary school teacher named Terry Reinhardt shares a story about how her school is doing just that, teaching kids that mistakes can be beautiful. She says, if one were to look through the work of our first graders at our school, they might wonder at a few things they saw. Every now and again, in the middle of their words or sentences, there would be drawn a lovely flower or heart, or maybe even a cat. And why was this drawing in the middle of their sentence? It's because they made a mistake. And when you're writing with a crayon, there isn't a way to erase a mistake. At first, many of the children became frustrated every time they messed up, and they wanted to tear up their paper and start over. But this is not allowed. The teacher gently instructs the children that when they make a mistake, they must turn it into something beautiful. And perfectionism isn't just about making mistakes. It's also about this idea of wholeness, that if we aren't perfect, then somehow we're broken or less than. I think many of us focus on this aspect of ourselves, much to our detriment. Rabbi Kushner, in his book, How Good Do We Have to Be?, tells a delightful little story by Shel Silverstein called The Missing Piece. It's a story about a circle that was missing a piece. And he says, a large triangular wedge had been cut out of it. The circle was in perpetual search for wholeness and went around looking for its missing piece. But because it was incomplete, it could only roll very slowly through the world. And as it rolled slowly, it admired the flowers along the way. It chatted with butterflies. It enjoyed the sunshine. It found lots of pieces along the side of the road, but none of them fit. Some were too big, some were too small, some were too square. So it left all of them by the side of the road and kept on searching. And then one day, it found a piece that fit perfectly. It was so happy. Now it could be whole, complete, at last, with nothing missing. Perfect. It incorporated the missing piece and it began to roll. And now that it was a perfect circle, it could roll very fast, too fast to notice the flowers, too fast to talk to the butterflies. And when it realized how different the world seemed when it rolled through it so quickly, it stopped. It left its missing piece by the side of the road and rolled slowly away, looking for its missing piece once again. The lesson of this story, suggests Kushner, is that in some strange sense, we human beings are more whole when we're incomplete, when we're missing something. People who have everything are in some way poor for that. They will never know what it feels like to yearn, to hope, to nourish their souls with a dream of something better. They will never know the experience of having someone who loves them give them something they have never had. In closing, I have to wonder. I wonder if we could look inside one another's minds and see what was really going on inside. If we could see the various worries and angst, insecurities and doubts, would we be less judgmental? Would we realize that our own feelings of needing approval and acceptance were no different than our neighbors? And if so, would we treat each other and ourselves more compassionately and with less judgment? If we truly saw one another as the imperfect beings we are, perhaps the world would be a kinder, gentler, a more peaceful place. May it be so.
Let us extinguish a chalice together with the words you will find on your order of service. Whoops. There it is. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. And now, time for benediction from Dan.
I offer you this Gaelic blessing of peace during these troubled times. Deep peace of the running wave to you. Deep peace of the flowing air to you. Deep peace of the quiet earth to you. Deep peace of the shining stars to you. Deep peace of the infinite peace to you. Go in peace.